left to die in the desert, a wounded cowboy. But an Apache woman's gift changed his fate. Forever the sun had already risen high above the endless dunes of the Red Sands desert, casting sharp shadows over the barren landscape. Jack Harlow squinted through the heat waves, his horse stumbling over loose sand. Sweat ran down his sunburned face and his throat was dry, but he pushed on. The desert was unforgiving, but Jack had always believed he could handle anything. He was a cowboy, a scout, and if nothing else, a survivor. He had been hired to deliver a shipment of supplies to a distant frontier town, one that had grown up along the fringe of human expansion. The settlement was barely more than a cluster of metal shacks, solar towers, and dusty streets, but out here it was a beacon of civilization. Jack had been careful, too careful perhaps, to make sure the cargo was safe. But there were eyes everywhere in this desert, eyes that belonged to men who didn't care about rules, law, or loyalty. Jack's thoughts drifted to the ambush that had happened just hours earlier. He had known something was off the moment he spotted tracks in the sand leading off the main trail. At first he thought they were animals, jackals, maybe desert foxes, but the pattern was too deliberate, too precise. By the time he realized the danger, it was already upon him. 3 men had emerged from behind a dune, armed with energy pistols that glimmered under the sunlight. The fight had been brutal, and Jack had given everything to escape. But they had shot him, aiming for his leg and side. Pain now gnawed at him relentlessly. He stumbled as his horse bolted ahead, the creature's hooves leaving deep marks in the sand. Jack fell to one knee, gasping, his lungs burning. The sun felt like a hammer on his back, relentless and cruel. His left leg throbbed with every movement, and he could feel the blood seeping through his torn shirt where a bullet had grazed him. For a moment, Jack thought of giving up. The desert had a way of swallowing men whole, leaving no trace behind. But he could not. He would not. "Come on, just a little further," he muttered to himself, dragging one leg after the other. Every step was agony, but survival was a stubborn fire in him that refused to die. He didn't know how far he had gone or how long he had been crawling through the sand, but he could see a mirage on the horizon, a shimmer of light that could be water or maybe just the sun teasing him. He didn't care. He needed to move. Jack collapsed beside a craggy rock, using it for support. His fingers traced the coarse surface, grounding him against the delirium creeping into his mind. He could hear the distant buzz of the desert wind, carrying with it the faintest traces of life. Scavenger birds, the rustle of desert rodents, and maybe, just maybe, danger he couldn't see. The wind whipped across his face, and he tasted grit in his mouth. His vision blurred, and shadows danced before his eyes. He wondered if this would be the last time he saw the sky stretch endlessly above him. He remembered the ambushers' faces clearly, their cruel smirks etched into his memory. They had laughed when they left him, thinking he would die like the others they had left behind in these barren wastes. But Jack Harlow wasn't just anyone. He had survived worse, blistering storms on distant planets, shootouts on frontier moons, and betrayals that had cut deeper than any bullet. Still, this desert was different. It had a quiet menace, a stillness that made the mind wander and the heart falter. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time had no meaning here. Jack crawled toward what he hoped was water. His leg burned with every movement, and the wound in his side had soaked through his shirt. He tried to staunch the bleeding with his hands, but the blood was stubborn, warm, and sticky. He gritted his teeth, biting back a groan. He needed to survive, but his body was failing him. He was not a young man anymore, and the desert didn't forgive age or mistakes. Just as he began to fear he might collapse for good, he noticed a shimmer in the distance, different from the mirages that played tricks on weary travelers. It was small, almost like a figure moving through the heat haze. Jack blinked, squinting. At first he thought it was a trick of the light. Then the figure moved closer, deliberate and steady. It was human. "Help, please," Jack croaked, his voice barely a whisper over the wind. He tried to raise his hand but fell back onto the sand with a grunt. The figure stopped, shaded by the sun, and then stepped into the light. She was unlike anyone Jack had seen in this desert, tall, with dark hair braided tightly, eyes sharp and watchful. She wore clothing woven from fabrics he had never seen, materials that shimmered slightly as if they were alive. Her presence felt calm yet powerful, like the desert itself had chosen her as its guardian. Jack tried to speak again, but his voice failed him. The woman knelt beside him without hesitation. She examined his wounds with practiced hands, speaking softly in a language he didn't recognize. Somehow, he understood her meaning. She tore a strip from her garment, placing it over his leg. The cloth seemed to glow faintly, pulsing with warmth that seeped into his skin. He felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if the blood itself were being guided back into place. "You saved me," Jack whispered, surprised he could form the words. The woman did not reply with words he could understand, but she smiled slightly, nodding. Her eyes were calm, steady, and full of an energy that made Jack feel alive for the first time in hours. He wanted to ask her name, but his body betrayed him, and he fell into a half-conscious haze, drifting between pain and the faint comfort of her presence. When he awoke again, the sun had moved lower in the sky. The desert was cooling, shadows stretching long and thin across the dunes. Jack's leg no longer throbbed as sharply, and the pain in his side had lessened, though it was still present. The woman was nearby, tending a small fire and placing water in a container. She gestured for him to drink. The water was cool and sweet, a miracle after the endless hours of thirst. Jack drank slowly, savoring each drop. He tried to move, but his legs still protested. The woman noticed and touched his shoulder gently, a silent message to rest. Jack studied her carefully. Her features were strong, but her hands were gentle. There was something almost otherworldly about her presence, something in the way she seemed connected to the desert itself. He felt a strange comfort, as if the desert's harshness softened in her company. "Who are you?" Jack asked finally, his voice stronger than before. The woman looked at him, eyes deep and thoughtful. She did not answer in words, but she reached into a pouch at her side and produced a small, strange device. It glowed faintly, a soft blue light, and she held it over his wounds. Jack felt warmth spread through his body again, stronger than before. He gasped as the sensation seemed to knit his flesh, binding the torn tissues together. He could not explain it. It was impossible. He should not feel this well after such injuries. The woman nodded again, as if affirming that the gift was complete. Jack flexed his leg, testing it carefully. He could move it. Pain lingered, but it was manageable. His side still hurt, but it no longer felt life-threatening. He looked at the woman in awe. "Thank you, I don't know what to say." She simply smiled faintly, eyes shining with something he could not name. It was not kindness alone. It was wisdom. It was power. It was something the desert itself seemed to recognize. Jack realized that he owed his life to her. The desert had been ready to claim him, but this woman had intervened. He wanted to ask her where she had come from, why she was here, and why she had helped him, but words seemed inadequate. He understood that some answers would come later. For now, survival was enough. The desert had shown its cruelty, but it had also shown its strange generosity through her. Night fell, the stars spreading across the sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet. Jack watched the constellations, feeling a strange sense of peace. The desert still loomed large and dangerous, but for the first time in hours he felt hope. He was not alone. He had been left to die, but he had been saved. And now, with the stars above and the mysterious woman by his side, he wondered if this desert, with all its danger, might yet have more to teach him. As the fire crackled and the wind whispered through the dunes, Jack knew one thing for certain. His journey was far from over. The desert was alive, and it had chosen a path for him. Whether he was ready or not, he would follow it. And perhaps with the help of this stranger, he might just survive, and even thrive, in a place that had claimed so many before him. The night in the Red Sands desert was quiet, but it carried a strange electricity. The stars sparkled like scattered diamonds, and the wind whispered against the dunes as if sharing secrets only the desert knew. Jack Harlow sat near the small fire, his body still sore but alive. He flexed his leg carefully, amazed that it no longer screamed in pain. The strange woman, Ailn, watched him quietly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Jack wanted to speak, to understand who she was, why she had saved him, and what strange powers she possessed. But Ailn did not speak in words he could understand. Instead, she gestured for him to follow her. Despite his hesitation, Jack nodded. His curiosity outweighed his caution. They walked slowly toward a small cluster of jagged rocks where she had set up a shelter of sorts. Ailn moved with surprising grace, her steps precise, as if she knew every inch of the desert. Jack struggled to keep pace, his wounded leg reminding him of its presence with every step. Finally, they stopped near a shallow cave. Inside, the air was cooler and shadows danced on the walls. Ailn knelt again, reaching into her pouch. She pulled out a small, translucent vial filled with a glowing blue liquid. The light was soft, almost soothing. Jack watched in awe as she poured the liquid into her hand and then touched it to his wounds. A warmth spread through his body immediately. He felt the blood in his veins pulse with renewed energy. The pain in his side dulled, and the throb in his leg subsided even more. It was as if his body remembered how to heal itself, guided by something greater than natural medicine. Jack's heart raced. He had seen advanced medical technology in frontier towns, but this was different. This was alive. "You this how?" Jack finally managed to ask, his voice hoarse but filled with awe. Aelin smiled faintly, a serene, knowing smile. She touched her chest and then gestured to Jack. He realized that she was giving him more than healing. She was sharing something of herself, her knowledge, her energy, her strength. It was not just medicine, it was a gift. Jack flexed his fingers, amazed to feel strength returning that he had thought lost. The desert had tried to kill him, but now he felt powerful. Not invincible, but strong enough to continue. Aelin nodded at him as if to say, "You can survive now." After a long moment, Jack asked, "Why me? Why save me?" Aelin's eyes softened. She gestured toward the desert, then to the horizon. Jack understood. This desert was alive. It had dangers beyond bandits and thirst. It had secrets, and it had chosen him to live for reasons he could not yet understand. The following morning, Jack woke to find Aelin already moving. She had prepared a small bundle of supplies, dried fruit, a water container, and a strange metallic object that glimmered faintly in the sun. He marveled at her efficiency. She spoke a few words, pointed toward the dunes, and motioned for him to stand. With careful steps, Jack rose. His leg felt better than it had in hours, though he still moved cautiously. Aelin guided him to the top of a dune where the desert stretched endlessly before them. She pointed toward a distant ridge, indicating that they needed to go there. As they walked, Jack tried to ask questions, but Aelin spoke little. Instead, she demonstrated. She would stop suddenly, touching the sand, and the desert seemed to respond. Sand shifted under their feet to reveal hidden paths. Rocks rearranged themselves slightly, making climbing easier. Even the sun seemed less harsh in spots where she lingered. Jack realized that her connection to this desert was extraordinary. Hours passed, and they reached a plateau overlooking a valley of dunes. Jack was exhausted, but his body, fueled by Aelin's gift, held strong. He finally asked the question that had been on his mind since she healed him. What exactly is this gift?" Aelin's expression grew serious. She traced symbols in the sand, symbols that glowed faintly before fading. Then she reached out, placing a hand on Jack's chest. He felt a pulse of energy, not painful but invigorating. Suddenly, his senses sharpened. He could hear the distant calls of birds, the hum of the desert wind, even the subtle vibrations of sand shifting far below. He could see movement in the distance, a faint shimmer that might have been a mirage or maybe something else entirely. "You have enhanced senses," Jack whispered, testing the limits of what he could feel. I can sense the desert itself." Aelin nodded, confirming his words with a quiet strength. She had given him more than healing. She had awakened something within him, something primal and human. Jack realized that this gift was not magic. It was the peak of human potential, guided by someone who understood the desert in a way no one else could. As they moved further, the desert revealed its dangers. A sudden sandslide nearly knocked them over, and Jack realized that the desert could shift violently, hiding threats under its sands. Small robotic creatures, likely scavengers from a long-forgotten war, skittered from dunes, sensing movement. Jack's heightened reflexes allowed him to dodge and protect Aelin, who moved like a shadow beside him. "Wait," Jack said, pointing toward a glint of metal half buried in the sand. They approached cautiously, and he realized it was a strange device, part human, part alien in design. It hummed faintly as if it were alive. Aelin knelt and touched it, her hand glowing briefly. The device stilled, its energy fading into the sand. Jack stared at her. "How do you know how to do this?" Aelin didn't answer. Instead, she gestured for him to keep moving. Jack understood. This desert was ancient, filled with relics and dangers from times humans had mostly forgotten. Her gift was a guide, a way to survive, and perhaps even thrive in a place that had no mercy for the unprepared. By midday, they reached a small oasis hidden between two dunes. Water glistened in the sun, pure and cool. Jack knelt and drank deeply, the liquid restoring his energy. Aelin watched silently, scanning the horizon. He realized that she was not only healing him but also teaching him. Every step, every pause, every glance was a lesson in understanding the desert, its dangers, and its hidden wonders. Why me?" Jack asked again, desperate for some clarity. Aeon finally looked at him fully, her eyes deep and knowing. She placed a hand on his shoulder, then pointed to the horizon where a line of jagged rocks shimmered faintly. Jack understood. His survival was not just about him. There were things in the desert, ancient and powerful, that had chosen him for a reason. Aeon had seen it, and she had prepared him for what was to come. As the sun began to sink, casting long shadows across the dunes, Jack felt a mix of awe and fear. The desert was more than sand and heat. It was alive, intelligent, and waiting. But with Aeon by his side and the strange gift she had given him, he felt a strength he had never known before. He could survive. He could fight. He could endure. Night fell again, and the stars mirrored the glowing devices scattered across the desert. Jack and Aeon set up camp near the oasis, the fire small but steady. Jack sat back, letting the cool night air wash over him. His body was stronger, his mind sharper, and for the first time he felt a strange connection to the desert, as if it recognized him now, as if it had accepted him. Aeon watched the sky silently. She knew the desert had trials ahead, tests of courage and skill, and she knew Jack would face them. But she also knew he had potential, human potential, raw and untapped. The gift was only the beginning. How he used it, how he survived, and how he adapted would determine not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of others who lived on the edge of the desert. Jack finally spoke, breaking the silence. "I don't understand it all, but I trust you. I trust this desert. And I trust myself." Aeon nodded, a faint smile crossing her face. She handed him a small, sharp knife, its blade glimmering with a faint blue light. "Use it wisely," she seemed to say. "There are dangers ahead that even your new strength may not anticipate." Jack held the knife tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility, survival, and the unknown. He looked around the oasis, at the endless dunes stretching into the horizon. He knew the desert would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But with Aeon's gift, his new senses, and a determination that refused to break, he also knew he would not give up. He would survive. And somewhere deep in the sands, the desert watched, patient and alive, waiting to see what the human heart could endure. The Red Sands desert stretched endlessly before Jack and Aeon, an ocean of golden dunes rolling under a blazing sun. Every step they took was a battle against the heat, the wind, and the shifting sand. Jack had grown stronger since Aeon had healed him, but he still felt the desert testing him at every turn. "Keep close," Aeon said quietly, her eyes scanning the horizon. Her voice was soft, but there was authority in it. Jack followed, trusting her instincts as much as he trusted his own newly heightened senses. The desert was alive in ways he could feel now. Sand shifted underfoot with purpose, forming unexpected dips and mounds. Rocks seemed to guide their steps, creating paths where none should exist. Jack marveled at how Aeon moved through it effortlessly, like a shadow blending with the dunes. They had been traveling for hours when Aeon stopped suddenly. She crouched low, placing a hand against the sand. Jack froze beside her. He could feel it too, a faint vibration under the ground, subtle but distinct. Something was moving beneath the surface. "What is it?" he whispered. Aeon didn't answer. Instead, she handed him the glowing knife she had given him earlier. Its blue light pulsed faintly. Jack gripped it tightly, his heart pounding. Then the ground erupted before them. A mass of sand shifted violently, and from it emerged a strange, metallic creature. Its legs were spindly, jointed like a spider's, and its body glimmered with remnants of alien technology. Its sensors scanned them, glowing red. Jack's instincts kicked in. He moved quickly, dodging the creature's first strike. The knife glowed brighter as if responding to his intent. Aeon leaped to the side, her movements precise and fluid, avoiding the creature's grasp with ease. Jack realized that his senses, enhanced by Aeon's gift, allowed him to anticipate the creature's movements. "Follow me," Aeon shouted, sprinting toward a narrow canyon. Jack struggled at first, but his strength and endurance carried him faster than he thought possible. The creature followed, its legs kicking up sand like pistons, relentless and terrifying. They ducked into the canyon, panting, hearts racing. Jack looked around at the rock walls. The narrow space limited the creature's movements, giving them an advantage. Aeon turned to him, eyes sharp. "We must work together," she said. Jack nodded, understanding without needing words. The creature lunged again, but this time Jack was ready. He struck at its legs with the glowing knife, the blade cutting through the metal with surprising ease. Sparks flew, and the creature howled in a metallic shriek. Aeon leaped, striking at the creature's sensors, disabling them one by one. Within moments, the machine collapsed, twitching, then lay still. Jack exhaled, his chest heaving. What was that?" Aeon shook her head. "A guardian of the desert," she said simply. "There are more." Jack felt a chill despite the heat. The desert was alive not just with wind and sand, but with machines, relics of a forgotten age, and it had noticed them. They pressed on, moving cautiously. Jack's senses remained sharp, detecting the faintest vibrations and sounds. Aeon taught him how to read the desert. The subtle shifts in sand, the glint of metal beneath the dunes, the faint traces of energy left by machines. He felt a new respect for her knowledge, realizing that survival here was more than strength, it was understanding. By afternoon, the sun had climbed higher and the heat became oppressive. Jack's throat burned and sweat poured down his face. He realized he had been relying on Aeon's guidance more than his own instincts. He needed to trust himself, to adapt fully to the gift she had given him. They reached the ruins of a long-abandoned outpost. Half buried in sand, the structures were fragile and jagged, remnants of a civilization that had once tried to tame the desert. Jack could see broken solar panels, shattered wind turbines, and strange devices half buried in the sand. Aeon led him inside, careful to avoid unstable floors and hidden traps. "This place," Jack said, "it's old, ancient." Aeon nodded. "Older than most know. Humans tried to build here long before the frontier towns. They left remnants, machines, technology, some helpful. Some dangerous." Jack frowned. He touched a metallic panel, feeling a faint hum beneath it. "And these machines, they still work." "They can," Aeon said quietly. "If disturbed, they will defend what remains." She handed Jack a small device that looked like a compass. "This will help you sense them." Jack studied it, feeling the pulse of energy radiating from it. It matched the rhythm of his enhanced heartbeat. Somehow he felt connected to it, as if the desert itself was teaching him. As they moved through the ruins, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Jack's senses tingled, a warning. From beneath the sand, another creature emerged, larger than the last, its armor scarred but deadly, its glowing eyes fixed on them. Jack raised the glowing knife, ready to fight, but Aeon raised a hand. "Wait," she said. She touched the sand, whispering words in her language. Jack felt the ground shift subtly, sand forming small ridges that slowed the creature's advance. "Use your senses," she said. "Feel its movements," Jack focused. He felt the vibrations of its heavy legs, the rhythm of its breathing, the slight changes in temperature. Guided by his instincts, he dodged to the side, striking at weak points in its armor. Sparks flew as the blade connected, and the creature stumbled. Aeon attacked with precision, disabling its sensors. Together, they brought it down. Jack felt exhilaration and fear at the same time. He had survived, but he realized that the desert's dangers were far from over. Each encounter tested his body, his mind, and his new abilities. He had been left to die once, but now he was learning to live in a place that demanded constant vigilance. By evening, they set up camp near a ridge overlooking the dunes. Jack examined his wounds. Though healing faster than before, his body was weary. Aeon prepared a small meal, giving him water and dried food. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, realizing how much he had taken survival for granted in the past. "Tomorrow," Aeon said, "we must move further. The desert is changing. The deeper we go, the more we will see." Jack nodded. He understood. The desert was not just a place to survive, it was a test. And with Aeon's guidance and the gift she had given him, he felt ready. He flexed his fingers, feeling the power coursing through him. The knife glimmered faintly in the firelight, a symbol of his new strength. As night fell, Jack lay back on the sand, staring at the stars. He thought of the ambush, the pain, and the near-death experience. And he thought of Aeon, the woman who had given him a second chance. He realized that survival was no longer about brute strength alone. It was about adaptation, intelligence, and trust. Somewhere in the distance, the desert shifted, sending tiny tremors through the sand. Jack felt them through his enhanced senses. Machines, creatures, and traps waited, testing those who dared to cross this harsh land. But Jack was ready. He was no longer just a wounded cowboy left to die. He was a survivor, a fighter, and something more. Aeon watched him silently, sensing his growing understanding. The desert would demand more, but Jack had begun to rise to its challenges. The gift had awakened his potential, and the trials ahead would shape him even further. He closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the desert beneath him, and whispered to himself, "I can do this. I will survive. I will endure." And somewhere, hidden beneath the dunes and ruins, the desert observed, alive and patient, waiting to see if this human, once left to die, could truly thrive. The desert had grown restless. The wind now carried an eerie hum like the echoes of machines long forgotten. Jack Harlow and Aeon climbed a ridge, their eyes scanning the endless dunes. Every grain of sand seemed alive, shifting subtly under unseen forces. The desert was no longer just a landscape to survive. It was a sentient challenge, testing every step they took. "Stay alert," Aeon whispered. Her voice was calm, but Jack could feel the tension in her posture. Her eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the horizon. "The desert does not forgive mistakes." Jack's enhanced senses tingled. Beneath the sand, he could feel vibrations, steady, mechanical, and enormous. He froze. "What is that?" he asked, his voice low. Aeon's eyes widened slightly. "Something old, very old. It sleeps beneath the dunes, but it is waking." Jack's heart raced. He had faced mechanical threats before, but what she described sounded like something far greater than the small, spider-like machines they had encountered earlier. And then the ground trembled beneath them, faint at first, then stronger, sending waves through the sand. From the horizon, a colossal shape began to emerge. Half buried in the dunes, it was a machine unlike anything Jack had seen. Its frame was massive, armored in metal etched with ancient markings. Glowing lines traced across its surface, pulsating with energy. It moved slowly, deliberately, the sand cascading from its joints as if protesting its movement. Jack swallowed hard. "That thing, it's alive?" Aeon nodded. "Not alive, not like us, but it thinks, reacts, and protects. It is a sentinel from a war long forgotten, guarding the secrets buried beneath the desert." The ground shook again as the mech fully emerged from the sand. Its massive arms ended in claws capable of crushing stone. Its single central sensor glowed red, scanning the horizon. The desert seemed to bend around it, every grain of sand moving with its presence. Jack felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. His enhanced senses pulsed, picking up every movement, every vibration. Aeon placed her hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "We fight smart, not just hard. This is not about strength alone." The sentinel raised its arms and let out a mechanical roar, sending a shockwave that made the sand beneath them leap. Jack dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. Aeon moved gracefully, using the rocks and dunes as cover. Together, they began a dangerous dance of survival. Jack realized that brute force would not defeat this machine. He needed strategy, intuition, and his enhanced reflexes. He could feel weak points in the sentinel's armor through the vibrations in the sand. He gestured to Aeon, and she understood immediately. They split, forcing the sentinel to track two targets instead of one. Jack sprinted across a ridge, his enhanced endurance keeping him light on his feet. The knife Aeon had given him pulsed with energy, resonating with the sentinel's vibrations. He struck at a joint in its leg, sparks flying as metal screeched against metal. The sentinel pivoted, swinging a massive arm toward him. Jack rolled, narrowly avoiding being crushed. Aeon attacked from behind, leaping onto a rock and slashing at the creature's sensors. The sentinel shrieked, a sound like grinding metal and fire, but it was relentless. Jack felt a surge of clarity. The desert was teaching him. Every movement, every vibration, every sound gave him information. He began to anticipate the sentinel's actions before they happened, dodging, striking, and retreating with precision. Aeon moved in perfect synchronization, guiding him through the battle like a shadow and light. The sentinel raised its arms for another attack, aiming for the ridge where Jack stood. He remembered Aeon's words, "Fight smart." He lured the mech toward a sand pit, carefully nudging it with his knife and subtle movements. The creature's massive weight shifted, and suddenly it stumbled, sinking partially into a hidden trap beneath the dunes. Aeon moved quickly, striking at its exposed circuits. Sparks flew and the sentinel roared, thrashing violently. Jack joined her, targeting other weak points he had sensed through the sand. The mech staggered, metal grinding, energy lines flickering. With a final coordinated strike, Aeon and Jack disabled its central sensor. The sentinel collapsed, sending a tremor through the sand. Jack gasped for breath, adrenaline coursing through him. He had never faced anything like that before. The desert was alive, yes, but it was also a test of the human spirit. They had survived not by strength alone, but by intelligence, courage, and teamwork. Aeon approached him, placing a hand on his chest. He felt the warmth of her energy and the calm strength she exuded. "You did well," she said simply. Jack nodded, still catching his breath. He realized that this fight was not the end. The desert had many secrets and more challenges awaited them. As they moved away from the fallen sentinel, Jack looked back at the massive machine. He felt awe and fear in equal measure. The desert had tested him, and he had passed. But he knew this was only the beginning. The deeper they ventured, the more dangerous the trials would become. Aeon led him toward a narrow canyon, hidden from sight, where they could rest. Jack followed, his body still pulsing with energy from her gift. He realized that the desert had changed him. He was no longer just a wounded cowboy left to die. He was something more, adapted, alert, and ready for the challenges ahead. That night they camped under the stars. Jack sat beside the small fire, reflecting on the day's events. The sentinel had been enormous, powerful, and intelligent, yet they had survived. They had overcome a creature that seemed unstoppable, using only their wits, instincts, and human determination. Aeon prepared a small meal, giving him water and dried fruit. She watched him silently, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Jack realized that she had been training him, teaching him to see the desert as a living entity, to anticipate its dangers and adapt to them. "Tomorrow," Aeon said softly, "we move deeper. There are ruins ahead, ancient structures buried beneath the sand. They hold knowledge and danger." Jack nodded. He understood that the desert had more trials in store. He flexed his fingers, feeling the knife pulse faintly with energy. The sentinel had been a test, a trial to measure their strength, courage, and adaptability. The desert was alive, yes, but humans were alive too, and perhaps that was why it had chosen to let him survive. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Jack felt a strange sense of connection with the desert. He could feel the subtle movements of sand, the faint hum of hidden machines, and the presence of life he had never known. The desert was not merely a place to survive. It was a teacher, a challenge, and a reminder of humanity's resilience. Jack lay back, staring at the stars, feeling the weight of the day and the promise of tomorrow. He had survived the sentinel, but he knew the desert held greater secrets. He was ready. He had Aeon, her gift, and his own courage. Together they would face whatever lay ahead. Somewhere in the dunes, the desert shifted again. Tiny tremors ran through the sand, whispering of more challenges. Jack could feel them through his enhanced senses. He smiled faintly, a mixture of determination and excitement in his chest. The desert had tried to break him, but he had adapted. And in that adaptation lay the true power of humanity, the will to survive, to endure, and to thrive against all odds. Aeon watched him quietly, sensing his growing understanding. The desert's trial had been brutal, but Jack had risen to it. The sentinel was just the beginning, and she knew the real test awaited. But for now, he was ready. He had begun to see the desert not as an enemy, but as a partner in survival, an ally in disguise, testing the limits of human strength and spirit. Jack whispered to himself, "We're ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it." And somewhere beneath the shifting sands and ancient ruins, the desert watched, patient, intelligent, alive, waiting to see if humans, once left to die, could truly rise to meet its challenges. The first light of dawn painted the red sands desert in shades of gold and crimson. Jack Harlow and Aeon stood at the edge of a vast dune, staring at a sight that made Jack's heart race. Half buried beneath centuries of sand were the ruins of an ancient city, its structures towering and angular, glimmering faintly as if the sun itself had preserved them. Metal and stone intertwined, and strange alien markings decorated the walls. It was both beautiful and terrifying. "This," Jack whispered, awe-breaking his voice. "This is incredible." Aeon nodded, her eyes scanning the city with reverence and caution. "Not all who enter this place leave," she said softly. "It is alive in its own way. It will test you. The desert prepares you, but the city, it demands more." Jack felt the weight of her words, but also a surge of determination. He had survived ambushes, near-death injuries, and mechanical sentinels. He had learned to feel the desert as if it were an extension of himself. And now, standing before the buried city, he understood that the greatest challenge was yet to come. They descended carefully into the city, the sand crunching beneath their boots. Jack's senses, enhanced by Aeon's gift, allowed him to detect hidden pitfalls and unstable structures. The air was cooler here, tinged with the faint hum of energy that pulsed through the ruins like a heartbeat. He realized that the city itself was alive, powered by forgotten technology and ancient systems that still operated after centuries of neglect. The first hall they entered was vast and circular, with walls etched in alien glyphs. Strange devices lined the walls, some pulsing with soft light. Jack felt a thrill of curiosity mixed with caution. "What are these?" he asked, touching a glowing panel. Sparks ran briefly along its surface, but instead of harming him, he felt a jolt of understanding, an insight into how the devices functioned. Aeon smiled faintly. The city was once a place of learning, of human ingenuity fused with technology beyond what most understand. It holds knowledge and power if you can survive it. Jack realized the meaning behind her words. Survival here would not rely solely on physical strength or quick reflexes. It would demand intelligence, intuition, and courage, the very qualities that made humans unique. As they moved deeper, a low hum began to fill the air. The walls shifted subtly, forming narrow corridors that guided them forward. Jack felt the vibrations through the floor, sensing faint movements beneath the sand. The city itself seemed aware of their presence, responding to their actions. Suddenly, a section of the floor gave way beneath them. Jack leapt back instinctively, but Aeon was ready. She grabbed his arm, pulling him clear as the ground collapsed into a hidden chamber below. They stared into the darkness, realizing that the city tested intruders, challenging their instincts and courage. "This is just the beginning," Aeon said. Her voice was calm, but Jack sensed the seriousness behind it. "The deeper we go, the more the city will demand of us." They descended carefully into the hidden chamber, which was filled with strange machinery and artifacts. Some devices resembled weapons, others looked like tools or instruments of study. Jack's enhanced senses allowed him to perceive faint energy currents, guiding him to areas that were safe. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, glowing with a soft blue light. Upon it rested a crystalline device, unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It pulsed as if alive, and Jack could feel its energy resonating with his own body. He realized that this was no ordinary artifact. It was a key, a source of knowledge and power left behind by the city's creators. Aeon placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is what the city offers to those who are ready," she said. "It will show you what humans can become when they embrace their full potential." Jack approached the pedestal cautiously. As he touched the crystal, a wave of energy surged through him. Images flashed in his mind, visions of humans surviving in harsh environments, adapting, creating, and thriving. He saw cities built on distant planets, machines crafted to serve humanity, and the endless ingenuity of people facing impossible odds. He felt the pulse of human potential, raw and untapped, flowing through him. He realized then that Aeon's gift had been more than healing. It had awakened something within him, a connection to the resilience, intelligence, and creativity that made humans extraordinary. The desert had tested his body, the sentinel had tested his courage, and now the city was testing his mind and spirit. The crystal's energy settled into him, and Jack felt stronger, faster, and sharper than ever before. But more importantly, he felt clarity. He understood that survival was not just about enduring, it was about adapting, learning, and using every advantage to thrive. Aeon stepped forward. "The city offers knowledge, but it does not give answers lightly. You must choose how to use it." "Power without wisdom is dangerous," Jack nodded, his mind racing. He realized that the desert, Aeon, and the city had all prepared him for this moment. He was no longer a lone cowboy left to die. He was a survivor, a human capable of facing challenges that would have broken others. And he had a choice: to use his strength and knowledge to protect, to teach, and to ensure humanity endured. As they explored further, they discovered a repository of historical records and advanced technology. Jack realized that humans had once reached far beyond what anyone in the frontier towns could imagine. The city held weapons, tools, and knowledge that could reshape survival on the desert world. It was a treasure trove, but it was also a responsibility. Jack looked at Aeon. "We can't let this fall into the wrong hands," he said. "This knowledge, these machines, it could destroy as easily as it could save." Aeon nodded. "That is why you were brought here. The desert chose you. Your survival, your judgment, it matters." Jack felt the weight of her words. He realized that the desert, the sentinel, and the trials of the ruins had not been random. They had tested him, shaped him, and prepared him for the responsibility of human ingenuity. He was no longer just surviving. He was shaping the future. Together, they activated a beacon in the heart of the city. The device sent a pulse of energy across the desert, signaling nearby frontier settlements of the ancient city and the dangers that lay within it. Jack felt a sense of accomplishment. He had survived the desert's trials, faced machines that should have killed him, and embraced the gift Aeon had given him. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the ruins, Jack and Aeon climbed a dune overlooking the city. The desert stretched endlessly, alive and watching, but Jack no longer feared it. He felt connected to it, to Aeon, and to the potential of humanity itself. Aeon placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have grown," she said softly. "The desert has tested you, but you have passed. Humans endure because they adapt. You have proven that." Jack smiled faintly, looking out over the shifting dunes. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "Without your gift, your guidance, I would have been another story buried in the sand." Aeon shook her head. "The gift was a catalyst. You did the rest. Humans have the strength, the courage, and the ingenuity to survive. I only helped you see it." Jack realized then that the desert, the sentinel, and the ancient city had all taught him the same lesson. Humanity could endure anything. They could survive, adapt, and rise stronger than before. And with Aeon's guidance, he had tapped into something greater than himself, the spirit of human potential. As the night fell, Jack felt a sense of peace he had never known in the desert. He was no longer the wounded cowboy left to die. He was a survivor, a protector, and a symbol of what humans could achieve when pushed to the limits of endurance and ingenuity. The desert whispered around them, alive and patient, but Jack no longer feared it. He had embraced the trials, learned the lessons, and emerged stronger. And somewhere deep in the shifting sands, the city watched, approving of the human who had proven himself worthy. Jack turned to Aeon. "Where do we go from here?" She smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the stars. "Forward," she said. "Always forward. There is more to learn, more to protect, and more to survive, but now you are ready." Jack nodded, feeling the weight and the freedom of his new understanding. The desert had tried to break him, but it had only made him stronger. The gift had awakened his potential, the sentinel had tested his courage, and the city had shown him the power of human ingenuity. Together, they walked down the dune toward the buried city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Jack Harlow, once left to die, had become a symbol of human resilience, determination, and adaptability. He had survived the desert. He had embraced his gift. And he knew that humanity, too, could endure, no matter how harsh the world, no matter how relentless the trials. The desert stretched before them, alive, mysterious, and beautiful. Jack smiled faintly. He had faced death, embraced life, and discovered what it truly meant to be human. And somewhere beneath the shifting sands, the desert waited patiently, knowing that humanity had proven itself once again.